Am I recording? I'll just start us off. Cool.
You sure you don't want me to talk about what I'm making for dinner before we start this?
Alright, you ready?
Yeah.
Hi guys, this is Second Perspective. My name's Paul. Over there is Torn. And today we're going to be talking about Deadpool. And I'm just going to get straight to the point. Torn and I have been talking a little bit off camera, whatever you want to call it. And he kept saying, we basically deserve a film that's not the same goddamn superhero movie. And I'm just going to ask you a very basic question. How or why is this different? And like in what way does
that's
actually...
that's really basic. It's super basic.
But you keep saying it's different. So
yeah, it is different. I mean, it's first of all, it has a different rating. It's R-rated, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of raunchy humor. I think that's where it distinguishes itself is in the style of humor that it has and the type of address that Deadpool has to the audience. So two kind of obvious points, like it's very raunchy, vulgar, R-rated humor that involves, like, you see some boobs, you see Ryan Reynolds pee-peeps, which I was disappointed. I heard him quoted. I'll get back to what your question, but I just want to talk about Ryan Reynolds' penis for a couple seconds. I was disappointed because I read an article that was like, you see him go full frontal, and I was like, oh my god. And he was like, I think my penis looks perfect. It's my makeup artist was really good. But then it's after he's deformed, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's obscured by his deformity, and I'm wondering, like, is this the state of the male penis in like on the movie screen today? It needs to be obscured. I mean, it's one of the absolute no-nos of cinema. Is like, you don't show a dick, right? I've seen a lot of boobs on film. Titanic was probably the first time I saw a boob on film, but this is probably the first penis that I've seen. Except for it's the warmest color for like a split second, but that was almost hidden. It was like they snuck it in there.
Isn't there full frontal nudity in Game of Thrones for males?
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh, and there's this other movie that's called Rare Exports, where there's a bunch of old Finnish guys that are running across like the tundra, and they've got their balls hanging out. But
anyways, like I know
so you see some penis. There's a lot of like body.
Anyways,
grotesque body humor.
The reason I ask you that rather basic question is that we are going to argue that this film is different from other superhero movies, but like I don't want it just to be our subjective opinion completely and without sort of actually substantiating, basically providing.
One point. I mean, very literal point. Ryan Reynolds' penis. You don't see Ryan Reynolds' penis in other superhero movies.
Yeah, and that's very true.
You see no nudity in other superhero movies. So that was sort of to get back to my main point, is the fact that this is built for a different audience, and I think it's built for an audience that is sort of tired of how, whitewashed, for one, and like kosherized, if that's a word, superhero movies have become, when they try and pander to a child audience and they try and make some adult jokes in the meantime. Like, who's your audience? 18 to 27-year-olds who, not even, like, 14 to 19-year-olds or something? I'm trying to suss it out. Millennials, let's just say millennials, with sort of Christian holdovers or something. Anyway, so there's that.
Okay, so then let's put some like context to it. What is your sort of typical superhero movie that you're kind of tired of?
Oh man, every time I say that, you're right. I do have something in mind, and it's the Avengers. It's the Avengers series, and specifically Captain America.
Okay, I will very quickly say, have you seen Captain America: The Winter Soldier?
No. Oh, I don't know. Is that where he's very American?
That is the second one.
The one where he's very American is the second one. Okay.
No. Sorry. Like the second one is the Winter Soldier, and I've seen that one, and I believe it was actually really, really good. And I think you'd be surprised. I probably would actually give that film an A-. And basically, what it did is it was much more grounded. It had that darker tone that some of these more successful films seem to have, and it focused more on sort of questions of like morality and like the whole thing of like being watched by the government and so on and so forth. Like, have you seen any of the trailers for Civil War, where like Iron Man's beating the shit out of Captain America and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, I've seen that. No, you're right. That's a fair point. Like, these things are going darker in tone. and maybe Deadpool, like it obviously didn't come together last minute, right? So they sort of obviously maybe the industry is onto this thematic collectively more than I'm giving them credit for. That's a really good point. But I think that this is definitely further out there than you'll see.
Yeah.
You know, like they take longer to build that thematic into the Avengers storyline, and Deadpool is just like all in your face all at once. You know, it's sort of like the punk addition to this genre. I don't know.
And like the way that I sort of place it in my mind is there are the I'm probably just going to get a whole bunch of people not particularly caring for me, but I didn't like the Avengers much at all, and it was so very confusing for me that it was super popular. But I didn't particularly care for the Avengers, and I didn't mind the Galaxies or Guardians of the Galaxy, but I felt like it was very much so in the same vein. And so those are the kind of films I'm a little bit tired of, where it's a very sort of clear black and white morality. These are good guys, these are the bad guys. We'll have some cool action scenes, we'll have some interesting backstories, some cute characters, but ultimately you sort of know how everything's going to go and there's nothing really at stake. And then there's a few of the other films that are sort of taking a bold step, and really the only ones I can think of are like The Dark Knight and the second Captain America, not the first, but the second Captain America, where actually it's stories of sort of interesting questions that you actually ask yourself, of like, the government having too much power, should we have, like, people with all, like, having way more power than others, should they be under control, etc., etc.
I mean, those aren't questions; those are answers.
Anyways, I digress. But like that's that sort of thing, and then Deadpool is just over here somewhere where it's like I don't really care too much about any of that. I just want to make. I want to see, like, these are the boundaries that we kind of all have that are sort of secret, not secret, but like we just don't talk about. Like, oh, you don't say anything, and it takes those boundaries and it kind of just pushes it as hard as it can, and to see sort of how the audience reacts, right?
Yeah, I mean, they do it right away too. They play with the intro credits, right, in a sort of meta way that is the same with the way that Deadpool addresses the audience the whole time. So the opening credits reel through like, they call the director some douchebag or whatever, and the producer some overpaid tool,
it's
and
like
then the writers,
a British villain,
and they like play through the first scene. And he's like, "How did we get here?" And it's the Chinese box narrative technique where they show you the opening scene, and then you rewind to get to how it's there, and they break, like they break down the scene in great detail, and they also break down the process of how you're getting the scene and how the credits are laying out. So it's like, the idea is that this is not only a character that knows, but this is a whole movie that knows why you're here already. And it sort of puts me off too, because then there are times when the humor overdoes itself and it's embarrassing, because then you feel like, oh, is this what I'm here for? Like I don't want to ID with this, And a movie like The Avengers doesn't ask you to ID with it constantly, but this one's sort of like, hey man, like I know why you're fucking here. You're here to like hear some dick jokes and shit or something. What? And then it overdoes it, and you're like, I don't know, you're sort of that guy at the party that says too much sometimes. But I do appreciate the risk factor there, and I think it was about time.
What can you think of, like, a moment or two where it kind of makes you go, and you think it overdoes it or something?
Oh shit! There's an interesting dynamic with Ryan Reynolds' character and the not really the sidekick, the protege figure from the X-Men duo, and I can't remember either of their names. Colossus, and then there's the.
It's like a Warhead or something.
Yeah, Warhead. Oh, yeah. Megasonic, Nuclear Warhead or something. It's not like the greatest name. But Ryan Reynolds is constantly trying to suss that character out and be like, obviously it's like supposed to represent a millennial stereotype or something of this embittered sort of like punk aesthetic. That doesn't know whether to sardonically comment on the way that things are going or just like show no affect at all, sort of thing. And it's like an important question for other generations to figure out. And so Ryan Reynolds is like constantly trying to, I don't know, there were some awkward moments there where it was like, there were some critiques that seemed to be gendered in strange ways. And I wasn't sure what his reaction to it was, but I think like the commerce of Deadpool, his like currency, it's total just like wit, and language games, and that character plays well into that. So I really appreciate it. And it's one of the features that sustained the romance as well for me between Deadpool and Vanessa. And it was too quick, right? It was Hollywood quick, and you can go back into the 50s, like the golden age of cinema, and the strong female lead who's able to like counter the witty repartee of the predatory sort of socialite gentleman or whatever. Socialite's probably not the right word to use, but like that's the ideal, and I think it updates that really well, but it doesn't do much to change it. Just the language changes, not the dynamic. Anyway, what was your initial shit? You had something you were saying?
Well, no, like I can just sort of redirect everything, and I think our main argument about why Deadpool is a different superhero and a big thing is a refreshing superhero movie is it not only sort of pushes boundaries or sort of tests the audience through sort of its gratuitous humor or sort of vulgar lines, but also does it through the breaking the fourth wall kind of aspect, and it basically says like, I know that you know that I know that you know, so where do we go on from here, right? And I'm hoping that like through this sort of like a weird relationship where it basically says like, look, I know that you want me to say all these weird things, or you just you know that I'm going to say a bunch of dick jokes. That I don't know, is it like paving the way for other films to be more aggressive and to not be so afraid to try other themes or take more risks? Because like as of like recording this, Deadpool's already made at something like $168 million over 3 or 4 days.
Done
and like
very well, yeah.
Right, and its budget was like 58 or 68, right? So
you're kidding. Wow, that's
exactly right.
Oh,
so like that's.
I wonder what other problems in the world we could solve.
Yeah, I don't even want to think of that. But like,
to school, that would solve a lot of the world's problems.
Yeah, but like that's what is sort of what's important for me about Deadpool is that it's hopefully in the world of cinema it will actually encourage people to take some risks and to show like, look, if you do something more than our superhero is witty and he's gonna have a change of heart and he's not gonna care for other people but eventually kind of sort of do care about these particular people and will become the good guy and then save them. Like if you take, because like at the end of the
that's Iron Man though, that's Iron Man. If you add to that dick and butt and boob and sex jokes and the fourth wall stuff, then it's not too far off, Like there's a couple of like sort of half-hearted attempts at this formula before, and Iron Man was really successful, and I enjoyed the character more because he's sort of that humanizes him to me. I don't know. There's definitely we have a penchant for like the ironic today, where it's like we don't know what stance to take. There's so much information. Life seems to be moving so fast, and the only thing to say is like something that won't get you in shit later. Which is take no position in everything that you say, which is very difficult. And so, anyway, your point. But yeah, Iron Man sort of does that too, I think. So trying to distinguish what exactly makes Deadpool different is interesting. And maybe we've fallen into the marketing trap of like, he's just raunchy or something. And so we think he's like brought all this extra stuff to the table. And really, it doesn't. Well, but certainly I've never seen like that meta-critical address during the credits of the film. And one thing they do with the fourth wall thing is his asides, they don't come like 2 at the beginning and then nothing until the end or something. They're pretty consistent throughout, which is I think something that the writers had to be really conscious of, and the director had to build those moments into the script. And sometimes when movies try to use that, they're not always so faithful to the technique, So I would say that was a good point. Yeah, please.
So okay, so then, well, see, the one thing I will say about using Iron Man and saying that like add the dick, boobs and all that sort of stuff, and then you've got Iron Man, is that even then with Iron Man, he still ends up falling more and more in line and becoming more of the ideal superhero, or showing a lot of sort of stuff. He just also happens to be super charismatic. Where the ending moments of Deadpool is like Colossal, Colossus. Like, we can talk about it later, but like he faces like, you know, it only takes a few moments, and like Deadpool's just like boom, and shoots him, right? Like it takes. I guess the thing that I found that I really liked about Deadpool, aside from the funny jokes, is that I think Iron Man, like, if we're using some weird metaphors, like, Iron Man approached the gate and went like, see, I can put my hand over it. Deadpool was just like full force of running and like doing like a vault over it and like keep going across it, right? And like
that's very strangely foreplay like.
Oh, what kind of foreplay do you use? Like,
I don't know. I was thinking about horse races too, so it's a strange. I don't know. Let's just let that one slide. Internet, delete that from your minds.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. But like, do you know what I mean? And like, I don't. At first, I thought maybe you had a point with using Iron Man as a.
I didn't realize I didn't.
Well, it's just, but I mean, I think the whole point of Deadpool is like he does actually go past, or he actually does do what other films won't, right? Because Iron Man shows like, look, we can kind of sort of do it, but they don't actually ever commit. And Iron Man ultimately becomes like every other superhero, just slightly more witty and just slightly more rebellious, right? I mean, like, am I wrong? I don't think I am.
I don't. So I think to really get down to this assessment, like this comparison between characters, it helps to add some details too. Because I think one of the things that allows Iron Man not to make these like maybe so personally inflected decisions, to think on a more abstract moral level as he becomes like educated about how to be a proper superhero or something, is the fact that like his playboy lifestyle is what needs reforming, right? But it's also like his power and money that allow him to remain indifferent to these moral problems. Like, he doesn't need his enemies. He doesn't need revenge or something. He's got this life built out for him, and he can go back to his laboratory in his den and like make himself new. He can make a new suit for himself, which is really, really what he is, right?
Yeah.
And like Deadpool, it's a more personal story. Like, it's sort of a more realistic narrative, or it comes from a more everyman sort of perspective. And obviously, like, the easiest way to have your audience like sympathize with the characters to give them some crippling terminal disease, like the cancer's in my brain and it's in my balls and it's in my oh my god, what am I gonna do? You know, so like, there's no way not to sympathize with them. But Tony Stark is like symbolizes the billionaire class and like wealth gone out of control, and like this basically a boy that needs to have his attitude readjusted, you know. I don't know, so there's less of a incentive for us to desire Deadpool to conform to, which allows the character those liberties as well. But it's a really good point, because I think that Colossus is like a total parody of the sort of Avengers style moral.
You should be good. Language, please. Yeah, like, okay, sure. Well, like, when we were talking before we were recording, you did bring up a few interesting points, and the idea of that they may have actually missed. Like, we keep commending Deadpool for pushing certain boundaries and so on and so forth, but you had actually mentioned that maybe they actually missed an opportunity to sort of bring another sort of common topic that needs to be sort of discussed out into the open. Do you want
to? Yeah, I can speak that for a second. I mean, it's something that I'm like, I don't know the right way to approach this, because I think that the movie missed some opportunities here, actually. But like, one of the ways that the characters build, or at least when I was doing some like very minor reading through some articles that movie or something.
We should briefly state, like, we're not like comic enthusiasts. We're not Deadpool.
No, God,
like,
which is a real.
Like, we're just we watched it. Like, we know far less about Deadpool than someone who's read all the comics and everything, right? So like we do take what we say with a sort of grain of salt. But
Deadpool people, feel free to correct us, jump on it, have a discussion. That's what the internet's all about. It's about like freedom of speech and like everyone should have equal access to like let their opinion be heard, and that's it.
But anyways.
Yeah, Deadpool's supposed to be like a pansexual, and so he likes boys, he likes girls, he likes everything in between boys and girls, and like with no distinctions. And I'm not sure about romantically how he feels to people of different genders or gender diverse people, but I think that they missed an opportunity because, and now this is just based on somebody who doesn't know the character and maybe what other romantic plots that Deadpool has been involved in or other like sexual attractions that he's been involved in, but they focus on the male-female plot, and there's some like kinky sex play that he says, "Whoa, not for me," when she's trying to put a dildo in his butt, you know. And he kisses a guy on the cheek, but it's really not that adventurous in that respect. So like, as somebody who was reading about the movie, didn't know much about the character, the word pansexual was in a couple articles, right? And so like they're selling that aspect of it, but then I'm looking for it and thinking like, well, what is a pansexual according to this representation? And I don't see anything that different than sort of just like a Arlecchino, like joke trickster sort of figure who uses his like energy and his sexual energy as a way to dominate situations sometimes, you know, like he uses his sexuality to confuse and threaten people, I think, in like when he kisses the pizza boy, it's like, I could kick your ass right now, you know. So it's,
but I'm going to kiss you.
Yeah, it's like the nuance in terms of representing his sexuality is not as strong as I would have thought. But here's one thing that the movie does do: is like gets people asking the question of what does pansexuality mean. But then, of course, you bring on all these responsibilities that I'm not sure it handles completely well. I don't know. So still an open question for me. But.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you wish the film had done? So with a little more vigor, or you think that it may have missed on? Because like I do think the more I think about this film, like it can theoretically, it might actually be able to revolutionize a few things, or at least spark something, right? And like I do think I'm really really hoping that it will spark some sort of risk taking in Hollywood. But like, is there anything else that? Okay, here's another way to frame it. Do you hope like I'm pretty sure it's already confirmed that they're doing a sequel. Right?
Did you stick around for the credits? What was that about? Were there things in the credits?
I didn't really understand what was going on. Apparently, they're like, look, you want a sequel, and I want a sequel. Something about Cable. I guess Cable's a villain. It was, yeah. So I, like, again, I was not totally
like
sure.
Like Cable, the real, like, the information technology... That's not what we're talking about? Cable's the name of a character?
Yeah, no, he's going to fight Comcast. That's what his whole goal is. But,
but Comcast they have such beautiful ads, you know? It's like the hummingbird and shit.
No. But, like, okay, let me reframe that question to you then. Would you, in the sequel, what would you like this film to push, try... What do you like? Assuming that they bought themselves a whole bunch of like goodwill and sort of currency, and the idea that they can push certain boundaries and hopefully spark some sort of creativity in sort of like the upcoming films and the film industry. What do you want them to push or try?
Maybe if they made a sequel, cool, but don't make a third movie. Like, don't make a third movie. That's an interesting challenge to the industry. Make 2 movies, like do 2 seasons, like Ricky Gervais or something like that. Because that's a statement in itself. But I think like if they were to make a sequel, then you have to like to be faithful to the meta, self-referential element to the films. Then you have to have him sort of like to respond to the reception of this movie. So to take what everybody's saying about this stuff and fold that into the narrative. And fold that into the character and the way that he addresses the audience in the next movie would be absolutely essential for me. Because if it's just the same guy and he's just making like addresses to the audience about the narrative and stuff that do nothing to address the situation, like the real world as it's updated since then, you know, it wouldn't.
Yeah, it wouldn't have the same effect, would it?
Like, it would sort of have to accelerate even more, which is why I think maybe like a second movie might be where this terminates or where it has to. And for this, and the other reason is sort of like selfish because I just want to see like less trilogies, less franchises like that or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do think you make a really good point though with the idea that like you can't make this film bigger. It just doesn't. That's not how Deadpool works, right? And like the only way that you can make this film more Deadpool-y is actually have him respond to sort of the reception that this film gets. And I think there is something valuable in that, and maybe so they can take that and then also sort of remark on sequels in general and maybe why trilogies shouldn't work or something like that. But yeah, like I think the way that Wade or Deadpool can be a superhero to at least the film industry is sort of remark on the things that it's doing wrong or the risks that it's not taking and sort of show them like, look, this is how you should do it. Boom, mic drop, and then leave forever, right? And I think it loses all its power if it starts to do 3, 4, 5, and like you can only be so funny for so long, especially like I really like this film, but if there's 5 of them, I guarantee you I'm not gonna like 4 and 5. Like I'm just like there's the reason I like this is because it's new, it's refreshing, and it's challenging things that I've seen so many times. So like it's like the whole Dark Knight thing where like Two-Face says like you die a hero or survive long enough to see yourself become the villain or whatever. And I really think this film is at risk of doing that if it goes too long. Yeah,
that's a great expansion on my point. Very nice rejoinder. One thing I did want to bring up is there are 2.5 Monty Python references that I got out of this, and I'd like, this is my challenge to you to see if you got them.
I don't know any of them, dude.
Okay, so...
Or here, like, give me the lines, and then I'll see if I actually know...
Well, okay, here, I'll give you one scene that you might be able to recognize. So when Colossus first goes to interrupt Deadpool's revenge plot on the bridge, and Deadpool's like trying to smack Colossus, and he keeps breaking his hands and shit. What does that remind you of?
Oh, fuck, it's the Black Knight with like the...
there you go.
The one-legged ass kicker and all that stuff. Yeah, okay.
There's that one. Yeah. But there's one that starts even before that, and it's like right when the film, early on in the film, when they begin to develop the romance plot between him and Vanessa, between Deadpool and Vanessa, is the Four Yorkshiremen sketch, and it's what unites them at the end again when she shows him like, okay, I want you back, everything that you've done, like I realize why you broke my heart so hard, and I can accept your ugly face, so I'm gonna return your humor with humor. But the humor that they use is like, it's this bathos principle of like the low humor, right? Sort of like I don't want to explain that anymore. That would be stupid and pretentious of me. But the Four Yorkshiremen sketch. So when they're each sitting around and they're like, we used to go to sleep every night, all 23 of us, in a rolled up newspaper in a hole in the road, and we would have cold gravel for breakfast, and in the morning we would go to work for 20 hours a day, and we would come home and Dad would thrash us to sleep. And then the other guy goes, oh, luxury. You know, Dad used to kill us every night. We would work more than 24 hours a day when we went at mill, and we'd have to like kill each other to get a place on the bed or something, and we shared one piece of corn between us to you know, whatever.
I didn't know that was a Monty Python kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a Four Yorkshiremen sketch. That sounds weird in my mouth now, but that's right. But it's like what sort of bonds them really tightly. And then he makes a bald Basil Fawlty reference in the thing. He compares the villain to Basil Fawlty, which is John Cleese's character in Fawlty Towers, which is only, I think, 6 episodes long, and it's a great short series about a hotel proprietor. I was about to say a hotel proprietor and his wife, but it's a couple that owns and runs the hotel, and he performs as if he's the one running everything, but he's really not, and he fucks everything up.
Interesting.
Anyway, so there are 2.5 Monty Python references in there.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. If in case you didn't know, I did thank you for reminding me of 1 that I know and 2 that I didn't. Other than that, hopefully you guys got something out of this conversation. It definitely took us a little while to sort of see what we wanted to actually say about this film, but I do think essentially what we ended up with is that Deadpool it has the opportunity, and potentially already has sort of revolutionized not just superhero movies, but movies in general. Let's hope it does. Not only that, but let's hope it doesn't fuck it up by doing a sequel and then just actually shitting the bed. So, yeah, that's our hopes. Other than that,
an A.
Yeah. Other than that, thanks for watching, guys. We're Second Perspective. My name's Paul. Over there's Torn. And until next time, see you guys.
Yo, all right, wow.